Monday we had 6 games on. Let's break down everything that happened. Millions of people apparently moving to the locker room, injuring themselves during the games. What's the outcomes? What are the performances? Well, I think Michael Bolton's got some answers, maybe, hopefully.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and have we ever figured out what the actual relationship is between Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck and Huey, Dewey and Louie? Why is everyone's uncles and who are their parents? What's going on? What's happening in that family? That's okay. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Blue Sky at joshlloyd.bsky.social, on Twitter at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at LockedOnFantasyBasketball. The college football playoff is here, and you don't want to miss a moment of the action. The college football playoff is presented by Allstate, and it begins with 4 first-round games, December the 20th and the 21st, on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. Also, LockedOnDaily.com is where you want to go and find the newsletter for your favorite NBA team. LockedOnDaily.com, sign up over there. I don't want you to subscribe or double bang or anything like that. No comments, nothing. Just please, just leave it alone. Don't do anything with it. Nothing at all. Monday's games. Tomorrow, there are no fantasy-relevant games. There will still be a show coming out, don't worry. Wednesday, there are no fantasy games. There's no NBA games at all on Wednesday. So we've got 2 days of 0 games on. And then we go back into big action Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to end this week. Let's cover off a little bit of waiver wire trend action before we get into the 6 games of the day. We'll start off by the most added players there. In Washington, number 1 is the Lambrusco legend, Passion Pop Justin Champagnie, who is continuing to put up great numbers. He is shooting unbelievably well from 2. He is grabbing 1 million rebounds. He is playing a lot of minutes. I'm still going to be skeptical of it because there are 3 players to return who can play that position. I don't know when that's happening, though. So for now, yeah, people are grabbing Champagnie and they're enjoying what they're getting. The second most added player is one that made, I guess, some sense. And we talked about the Dennis Schroeder trade and how it left an absence there in Brooklyn, but it felt like it was going to be messy. Oh, yeah, it was messy. We'll talk about that later on, but Shake Milton was the second most added player. I reckon he might be on the drop list tomorrow. Obi Toppin, the third most added player. Toppin is producing really well. I don't see it being a continuing thing, but that's okay. If you want to use him in the short term, go ahead and do that. Kelly Oubre Jr. with Jared McCain out and Embiid out, it does make sense to be rostering Oubre. So as much as I have a distaste for his overall fantasy game, yeah, go ahead and do that. Dorian Finney-Smith, the 5th most added player. I think that's largely because the Nets played today, and the same goes with Jordy Clarkson of the Utah Jazz. They played today, and he was actually also really good in the last game, Clarkson. I have some doubts about that continuing, but for now, those moves made sense. The most dropped players. Number 1 there is BDNR Nick Richards. I get it. Mark Williams is back, but also the Hornets have got the only team that play Monday, Thursday, Friday, and the same with Vas Micic being dropped. It makes sense. LaMelo Ball was back, and I get it. Those moves are okay to do, but sometimes you have to go, well, they are droppable players. I know that, but maybe we hold for the Friday game. Anyway, you can restream them in for Friday if you want to. Dalton Connect dropped, much like other teams dropped the ball in allowing him to fall to pick 17 to the Lakers. Dalton Connect has now been dropped by fantasy managers. That is the correct decision. Marcus Smart struggled last game and people moved on. Totally understandable, that one as well. Jared McCain is injured, so that's an easy drop. And then Al Horford has been dropped also. It doesn't appear like the Porzingis injury is going to be something that keeps him out this time. Horford is looking like that guy that we stream in when there are days when he starts, when Porzingis is out, but that little run we had at the start of the season, it does appear to be over, which again is not a super surprise, I don't think. I think we all sort of saw some of that coming. Let's just talk games. Let's go straight into the first game of the day, which is the Detroit Pistons and the Miami Heat. This one was in Detroit. The last time these two teams played, we got that wild fake timeout Spoelstra game. This one, instead, it goes to overtime, and Detroit wins it again. 125-124 is your final score here in this game. We'll talk about the Miami side. Jovic was out. They ran with the same starting lineup, but 2 of the starters who have been very much up and down in terms of playing time, Haywood Highsmith and Duncan Robinson, they didn't really play. 20 minutes for Highsmith. He had 3 points and a steal and a block. And We're in that period where we just know that at some point in the next 2 weeks, we're going to get a DNP from Haywood Highsmith. This is the pattern of Haywood Highsmith. He will play 30 minutes, and then it'll slowly go down, and then it'll go back up, and it's all over the shop. At the moment, he's a steal streamer, and then Robinson had 13 points with 3 threes. He ended up with 24 minutes, but he didn't do anything else, and it was 2 other guys off the bench that got those minutes. One of those was Terry Rozier, who played 34 minutes, which is good. Now, 5 of those minutes are in overtime, but the fact that he was a part of that starting group or that closing group is important. He had 11, 5, and 6, which is fine. Like, it's not going to blow us away. It's not fantastic numbers or anything like that. He remains a fringe 12er. And then Drew Smith. Drew Smith played 31 minutes, and he has been definitely the apple of Spoelstra's eye of late. If he didn't get 6 steals, which he did, it wasn't anything interesting whatsoever. So the steals are great, but he had 7 points. He didn't grab a single rebound. He had 2 assists. He's working not really that much as a point guard, more as an off-ball wing. And the steals are good, but like outside of streaming, that's really where we sit. Should I talk about Jimmy Butler? 44 minutes, 35, 19, and 10. 4 steals and a block. Elite field goals, elite free throws. Unbelievable stuff from Jim. Obviously, every game up until this one hasn't been anywhere close to being elite. So if you want to attribute this to trade talks and contract extent, whatever, you can. You're wrong, but you can. This is great. We love to see Jimmy putting up these big games because, of course, it hasn't been at this level anywhere close to it during the season. This is good, and we'll see where we go from there. Hero, not as good. 25 shot attempts, 36%, but 23, 4, and 1. That's still a good game when it's considered a down game. And Adebayo, man, he's been so frustrating this season. At least some of the shots went in. 15, 8, and 3 for Bam with a steal, but only 12 shots in 41 minutes. That's a little disappointing, and that's, again, been the case a lot with Bam Adebayo this season. On the Detroit side, they made a couple of changes to their starting lineup. The passport legend Jalen Duren missed the last game with a wrist problem, so he returned, and that meant Isaiah Stewart moved to the bench. And Tobias Harris is considered day-to-day with his thumb injury, and they did do it again. They started Ausar Thompson. Last time Tobias was out, Ausar started, and Ausar put up 27 minutes. He had 19 and 9 with 4 steals and a block. And I know that the questions are going to be all over this. Is this it? Do we go back and grab and run and add Ausar Thompson? And that is all well and good. I don't think I've got a problem with it. We all love Ausar. We all know there's a lot of fantasy relevance overall in his game. But remembering, if you're adding after this, you don't get this game. And the real reason that he did this was because Tobias Harris was out. And the games prior to this, all of his production had been moving down and trending down pretty quickly. He'd barely been playing. The fact that he played 27 minutes here, he had some leg cramps in this one too. The fact that he got those minutes suggests that the low minutes in the other game have got nothing to do with his health. It's just the way that JB Bickerstaff wanted to run things. Now, he could easily, let's be honest, Tim Hardaway's not good. So he could easily take that role, I guess. Got no problem taking a flyer on Ausar Thompson, but the correlation here is very clear. It's Tobias out, Ausar in, put up good numbers. And we'll see whether it holds. If you want to do it, actually go for it. That's okay. But it's not like, wow, it's all figured out now. I don't think. The other thing that happened in this one, there was a late scratch from Jaden Ivey. He was announced as a starter, and then knee soreness. I hate NBA teams how they do this. I hate it. It's so frustrating the way they do that. He was out. That meant Leaky Beasley started. 41 minutes for Malik, 28 points and 7 threes. In the past, when Leaky Beasley would have a bad game, you'd probably get 4 or 5 of them in a row. This season, he has had bad games, don't get me wrong. But he has one bad one. And then he steps back up and plays well again, and that's exactly what happened here. He is okay to have on a 12-team roster, but I wouldn't be married myself to that. Timmy Hardaway didn't really do much outside of the end of the game. He struggled, and then ended up with 16 points in 36 minutes. But a lot of that came through overtime in the final couple of minutes of the game. I wouldn't overly react to that. It's also good to see finally a good game from the passport legend, Jalen Duren. 32 minutes for him, 9 points and 16 boards with a steal and a block. But overtime helped that, and the fact that Isaiah Stewart left this game after 7 minutes. If you are in a deeper league, Stewart hyperextended his knees. If you're in a deeper league, Paul Reed is the ad. And yes, I know you'll say that they waived Paul Reed. They did. And then he got re-signed today. Why did that happen? Well, it was basically just a lot of cap economic stuff. Waiving Paul Reed, who had a non-guaranteed deal, they enabled them to save money on that. They brought in Javonte McCoy to bring themselves back up over the salary floor. Paul Reed's waiver time expired. They waived McCoy. They brought Reed back in at a smaller contract, giving them larger cap space to work through in trades. That's all that happened. So Reed is back as the third string center, but Stewart's going to be out. So you might get, honestly, we've seen how many nights Duren's been terrible. So you might actually get some 20-minute-a-night games of Reed. And no, I am not telling you to add Paul Reed in 10 or 12-team leagues. I'm not. Don't do that. But now, if Stewart misses, which I think will happen, Reed is going to be an every night player for this period of time, and that means that in deeper leagues, you've got to be paying some attention there. Ron Holland was great the game before. He had 8 points in 23 here, and Simone Fontecchio, JB Bickerstaff does not have the same level of affinity for old mate Simone that Monty Williams did down the stretch last season. It is not happening in that same way, and therefore you don't need to be paying really much attention to Simone Fontecchio at all. We're going to come back, and we're going to cover off the other 5 games. But today's episode in the interim is brought to you, well, not the interim, it's just always brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel, get ready to tackle all of the NFL action with FanDuel, which is America's #1 sportsbook right now. And new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL, and that's all in one place. In the middle of the game, you can check out all the live stats in the same spot that you would place your bet. So all the odds come up, you see the stats, you see the live play-by-play. It is all there. So go to FanDuel.com and join today and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. All right, let's do the second game of the day, the Philadelphia 76ers and the Charlotte Hornets. The Sixers, a couple of lineup changes. Andre Drummond started with Joel Embiid out for at least this week with his sinus fracture, and then they moved Gershon Yabusele to the bench and started KJ Martin. Now, previous games that Embiid had been out, they'd either started Drummond and Yabusele together, or Yabusele had been starting over Drummond, but they're going back to the Andre Drummond scenario. Remember, we got the Andre Drummond scenario for the first 10 games or whatever it was of the season, and it wasn't very good. But in this game, up against Charlotte, he was fine. We'll start with him. He played 28 minutes. He had 9 and 15 with 2 steals and a block, which is fine. Right? It makes you look at it and go, do I add Andre Drummond? And you can, but there's no guarantee that it's him over Yabusele. There's no guarantee that he's good because we've also seen bunches of games where he's been bad. But it's not a terrible move to do that. Paul George looked really good. And that's one of the best things to take out of this game is there are a lot of people who do think that Paul George is washed and he's terrible. Well, he was fine here. 33, 5 and 8. He's better than fine. He was bloody good. 33, 5 and 8 with 6 threes and 2 steals and a block. He shot ridiculously well, which is not going to hold. But you love that the steals were there and the assists were there on top of it as well. And then Tyrese Maxey, big volume, 28 shots. Unfortunately, he was below average in both field goals and free throws, 43 from the field and 77 from the line. But 13 free throw attempts is huge. He had 40 and 5, 5 assists, 4 steals, 6 triples, huge games there. And then, like I said earlier in the waiver wire part, Kelly Oubre is going to have to do more. Now, Oubre's rebound numbers are way up this season. He had 9, 10, and 9 with 4 assists and 2 steals and a block, which from Oubre is amazing. And he shot well. Yeah, for now, I think you're rostering Kelly Oubre. Eric Gordon got dusted off. He'd been out of the rotation. And with the absence of Jared McCain, he played 26 minutes. 9 points with 3 threes. I don't think we need to do anything with that. In fact, I'm bloody sure we don't. But just watch that he was in the game and Lowry still only played 18 and Reggie Jackson did not play at all. Yabusele went scoreless. I don't think you're holding him in 12-team formats. You can move on there.
Get that garbage out of here.
While KJ Martin had 2 and 2 in his 21 minutes, and that's clearly not interesting for most people. We thought there might be a small chance that Ricky Council does something, but he didn't. He had 6 points in 9 minutes, so most of you can consider that one something to move on from. For the Hornets, LaMelo Ball was back. Yeah. He only played 26 minutes as he returns from the calf injury, and they play Thursday, Friday, so I would expect that he sits one of those games. But 15, 5, and 11 with 4 steals. He only shot 33% and was bad from the line, so that hurts, but it's just good that he's back. It was also a big game from BDNR. Nick Richards played 15 minutes. And you look at that and go, man, why would I drop that? That's ridiculous. 19 and 5, a steal and a block. It is ridiculous. You're right. It's got no hope of maintaining. He's not going to be this player in 15 minutes. He attempted 6 free throws and hit 5 of them in that time. He was 78% from the field. All that stuff's just not going to be a real thing. He had a usage, by the way, a usage for Nick Richards of 41%. So to say this is an outlier game is one of the understatements of a century. It's not going to be anything real. So if you dropped him, don't regret it. If you've got him and you say, well, I've got to hold now, he's awesome, you don't have to. The only reason I would say that, or say that you could, is the upcoming back-to-back where Mark Williams will sit. As for Williams, he played 17 minutes, so the minutes are pushing up. 7 and 3 is nothing to write home about, but he had 3 assists and he blocked 3 shots. I've got no question whatsoever that Williams is going to be the starting center and push his minutes up. On the downside, Brandon Miller, not only did he not play well early on, but then he sprained his ankle. He had 12, 4, and 4. He shot 44%. The usage was way down with LaMelo back. It did look like that would probably cost him some time, and he's had a couple of injuries already this season with his ankle and with his glute. With him missing, I would expect that it's Cody Martin and Josh Green who step up there. Martin played 29 minutes. He had 10 and 5. He had 2 steals. He had a block. He had 2 threes. I like Cody as at least a 14-team league guy, and again, with the nice Thursday-Friday combination, you can try to stream him in. I'd probably use Cody over Josh Green, to be honest. And then Miles Bridges, not a lot of minutes, 28 minutes. It was not a super competitive game for a large portion of the time. Bridges had 24, 6, and 4, so it's good to see that volume up, and he probably does see an increased volume with Miller. I would say likely to miss, and obviously Vasilije Micic is a droppable guy. He didn't score, he had 5 assists, but there is going to be a game, probably on Thursday or Friday, where Micic plays starters minutes and is useful. If that's on Thursday, that's not really of much use to us. If it's on Friday, then yeah, it can be pretty useful. But at this point, we just don't know when that's going to happen. The next game, we're going to go up to Toronto, unfortunately for us, and talk about the Chicago Bulls and the Toronto Raptors. Pat Williams moved into the starting lineup. Was that a permanent thing, or is that because Zach LaVine was out? I'm not sure, but that's what happened. And Nikola Vucevic returned, and that meant Jalen Smith moved back to the bench. The Bulls win at 122-121. Josh Giddey was starting to put up some really good numbers. 11, 9, and 8, 2 steals and a block, 75% shooting, and then he sprained his ankle. It's the same ankle that he hurt during the Olympics, which cost him a significant amount of time, and I would have to think he's missing some games here. LaVine sat this one out so he could return in the next one, but this further just gives the extra little bit of value there to Ayo Dosunmu. Now, we'll go to Dosunmu, who he played 40 minutes. That's great. But again, part of the reason why I'm not a massive Dosunmu guy is like 40 minutes, he had 12, 5, and 5. That's not terrible. It's fine. But in 40 minutes with LaVine out and then Giddey out, you probably just want a little bit more. It wasn't necessarily in this one through lack of usage or inactivity, although the usage was still under 17%. It's just that a lot of shots didn't go in. We're rostering him still for the moment. I wouldn't rush to add Pat Williams, who had 6 points with 2 blocks in his 2021, but just watch where that goes. The things we have to pay attention to here are, well, actually, let's just get out of the way. Let's talk Vooch. 59% shooting, 24 points. And the last couple of games before this, Vooch's usage was down, and it was good to see that he bounced back here. He's not a super high usage guy, but 23%. Of course, he still continues to hit every single shot in the world, and I can't explain it. There's no way that you can explain it to me that he is now one of the best shooters in the NBA, and I will maintain that this will not hold, but it continues to hold. The interesting one here is Lonzo Ball. He was in the closing lineup. He played 23 minutes. That was past his limit. He had 8, 6, and 7 with a steal and a block and didn't shoot well. If Giddey is going to be out, which I think he is, and then if LaVine is going to miss, and if they're able to push Lonzo to 23, that means I'm in. Now, Lonzo will miss some games. He'll miss back-to-backs, but if he's at 23, if they can get him to 25, then we're in. So if you wanted to take a crack at it, I'm okay at this point. Horton Tucker played 25 minutes. He was also in the closing group. Relying on Taylor Horton Tucker's insane policy. I don't know what we're doing here, but he had 15, 4, and 2. He had 2 steals. He was bad at the line, but his field goals were good. I wouldn't be looking at him in 12s, but in 14s, with these guys and their potential absences, I get it. I see the appeal, and you could do that. We'll go on to the Toronto side of this game. Still a bunch of guys out for them, and then we added to it with the absence of Jakob Poeltl, who didn't start the last game. He came back and he started this one, but then he slipped on like a wet spot, strained his groin, and we don't have an update. He's getting imaging. He had 6 and 5 in 22 minutes. Now, the immediate thing is going to be, do we go and add Kelly Oubre Jr? Because he's by far the best fantasy option there. He played 13 minutes. He had 7 points. He had 2 steals. That's fine, but that's not doing anything exciting. Chris Boucher, who'd been out of the rotation, had 11 and 10, but he started to get those minutes before Poeltl got hurt. So I don't know how clear this is. It doesn't look super clear, and in fact, Olynyk did have foul trouble, yes, but he didn't play at all in the fourth quarter, and Poeltl wasn't there. So they went smaller in those situations. You got Mobo, who's getting some minutes. They didn't even use any Bruno Fernando, which they can do as well. It was a weird game where the Bulls were up big, the Raptors were able to come back into it, and then there's foul trouble for Olynyk. I don't really know how to read this one. If you want to just take a flyer on anybody, it does probably make sense for Olynyk, considering that he is the guy that is the best fantasy option there. But I am not going to sit here and tell you I've got a high level of confidence in it. Rowan Barrett had 32, 5 and 9. He played 37 minutes. He had 2 blocks. That's just huge stuff from him. Fantastic. And it was also a massive dick showing. Grady played 33 minutes. He had 27, 6 and 2 with 3 threes. And it's obvious what's happening. I believe anyway. There's no Quickly. There's no Barnes. Dick took 20 shots. He had 27 points. That is fantastic. One of the biggest sell highs you'll see. Because as soon as we get word that Barnes is returning or Quickly's returning, we're just not going to get as many Dick opportunities as what we're getting now. So for now, this is great. But he needs 2 guys out to actually have the ball in his hands. And a Dick with no ball in his hands just isn't as impactful. And he's not going to be a 12-team league guy in that scenario. So if you could get any sort of top 100 player back for Grady, do it. Baji had 15 points in 31 minutes, which is like fine. He shot 60%, but everything is very muted with him. I'm not particularly impressed, but what we actually got, the showing that I wanted. Jamal Shed outperforming Davion Mitchell. Now that, most of you won't care about that. But I know I'm here talking to the double Onyxers. You guys are going to care a lot. Shed had 10, 4, and 6 in 12 minutes. He was part of the unit that came back into this one. He'd been out of the rotation in the game before, but he's an interesting player, and I just want them to give him that opportunity that they're being giving to Mitchell. We'll see what happens, but he played basically the entirety of the fourth quarter and put up those numbers, which are great. Will they do that? I don't know, but it is something for deeper leagues to watch. Jacoby Walter's getting his 24 minutes. He's not really doing anything with him, so I don't think we're rostering him in spots. And then Mobo still starting in place of Barnes. He played 28 minutes and he had 4 and 4. So no, we're not looking at him in 12-team formats at this stage. Let's go and have a look. We've got a couple of other games we're going to go have a look at. We'll get to them in a sec though, but today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood, and in particular, Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need that old silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and the perks that are usually reserved for high society. Now, if you've got Robinhood Gold, you can get the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash, and you could be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. The generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply for product-specific disclosures product-specific disclosures. Visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rocket Money. You might have subscriptions to many services. You might have more than one of them. You might have forgotten that you've got subscriptions. So Rocket Money helps you find subscriptions that you forgot about, or the ones you might be even paying twice for. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitoring your spending and help lowering your bills so you can grow all of your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in cancelled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. One of the best features on it is the subscription tracker. Use it. You can cancel your services, see which ones you've got, and enables you just to save so much money. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Now, this next game, there's not a huge amount because it was just an absolute killing. Like, Cleveland beats Brooklyn 130-101, but Brooklyn was one of the teams we really wanted to see what would go on after the Dennis Schroeder trade. And I'm not sure what sort of answers we got. We'll start with the Cleveland side of things here. Again, what are we going to do? Donovan Mitchell played 30 minutes. That's the most of anybody. 18, 3 and 5 with 4 steals. Great. Dracaris LeVert, in only 19 minutes, had 19 points. He hit 6 threes. He had 2 steals and 2 blocks. That's fantastic, but nothing changes about our evaluation of LeVert. He's a streaming guy who could be incredibly hot or incredibly cold. One thing I do know, and I'm very confident of this, if anyone here watching this is still holding on to Ty Jerome, if you're still holding on to milk, like it's straight out of the udder, don't.
Get that garbage out of here.
Jerome had 5 points in 16 minutes with 6 assists. Okoro started here. He kept his spot, or Dean Wade moved to the bench and Evan Mobley returned. 21 and 5 is great. Allen had 12 and 8. But again, look, what am I going to tell you about this game? George Niang had 17 points with 9 rebounds in 25. The game was over so early. Kenny Atkinson was just able to play many guys. We had 7 Tristan Thompson minutes. 7. We got 5 minutes from the God of Hammers, JT Thor. There's just nothing that, from the Cleveland side of things, that I think is really all that important or worth spending a bunch of time on. So I don't want to waste your time with it. What about on the Brooklyn side? Well, we know that Dennis Schroeder was out, and what they did is something they've been avoiding. They started Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton together. Interesting. It's okay, what's going to happen with Simmons? Well, he played 31 minutes. Prior to the game, Jordi Fernandez says, yeah, we're probably going to play him the similar amount of minutes, which had been 21. But he said, we'll push it up a little bit into the mid-high 20s. Okay, we went even further. 10, 4, and 8 with 2 steals. Now, I have absolutely no idea whether that's going to happen every game. In the past, they don't want to play him with Claxton, so we take that on board. Before this game, they say same minutes. A slightly increase to mid-20s, high 20s. Okay, cool. But this is even further than this. So all of that is a lie or I don't know. If Simmons is playing 31 minutes, that is a must-roster player. Now, when you're adding someone off the waiver wire, and I say must-roster player, what does it cost you? Nothing. All right? It doesn't cost you anything. He could very easily play 20 minutes in the next game. He could very easily get hurt in 2 games' time. He could very easily just be terrible. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I actually don't care. I think that I was uncertain about how this would all go. Like, obviously, he's had the best pedigree in terms of fantasy value. I wasn't sure what they'd do with Milton. Not with Milton. We'll talk about him in a sec. With how it would work with Claxton, but whatever. They did it. He started. He played big minutes. You add him. As for Claxton, yeah, they just deprioritized him. And the thing that the pairing that had been working really well off the bench worked well again, and that's the Day'Ron Sharpe and Ben Simmons minutes. As for Claxton, 8 and 4. It has been a disaster season from Claxton again. We're holding, but it looks bad. But Day'Ron Sharpe cooked. 15 and 7 with a 3. He had 3 steals. That is a nice little deeper league option. But the other guards, man, like we thought maybe there was a chance for Shake Milton. And Shake Milton's one of those guys that in the past, you give him the opportunity, he goes out, has his big scoring game, and everyone gets excited, and he looks terrible, and then it drops off. We didn't even get to that stage here. Milton played 17 minutes and had 5 points on 22% shooting. So the logic was there to have a look at it and see how it goes. But in the end, I think what is going to happen here with no Dennis Schroeder, and it's going to get further complicated when Cam Thomas returns, is that it's just going to be a mess. And outside of Simmons at the moment, nothing's going to matter. So Shake Milton.
Get that garbage out of here.
If you added Keon Johnson, he had 5 points in 24 minutes. So see you later.
Get that garbage out of here.
We've got Zaire Williams still to return, and then we've got Jalen Wilson who played well here, 13 with 4 threes and 2 steals, but my level of confidence in him is relatively low. They just looked terrible. They couldn't generate any offense, and that's one of the things we also said after the trade is like, who the hell handles the ball and is able to do any of these things? Because there's nobody. Maybe they do have to play the Vulture Reece Beekman because there's nobody that's really available who can be a point guard or be an initiator or be a shot creator. Cam Thomas is going to take 1 million shots now, and that could be very good. Or it could also be very, very bad as he shoots 30% on 30 attempts, which is an exaggeration, but actually, is it? It might not be. It's going to be really, really rough. So I think our takeaway here is, yeah, look, Ben Simmons is starting. Is it 31 minutes a night? I don't know, but it was. But if you had any faith in a breakout from Milton or Johnson, that should have been squashed. Not to say they can't have big games, because they can. But they're bad players, and they didn't lean on them here, so whatever. Move on, and we're good. 24 minutes for Dorian Finney-Smith. He had 10 and 4. That's a very mid-game. Of course, they were getting cooked. Finney-Smith has had some 12-team league appeal, but it is incredibly limited. I think the interesting thing here, again, is the Day'Ron Sharpe stuff. It is Ben Simmons, and then it's to see how Jordi Fernandez tries to deal with a team that just has no primary initiator whatsoever. All right, the next game. What a cracker this was. The Nuggets get the win. Big comeback from them to beat Sacramento 130-129. Really a fantastic game. Christian Braun was out of this game. That sort of came out of nowhere. Yeah, he was on the injury report yesterday, but didn't really think much of it. But Braun did not play, and that meant that they started Russell Westbrook. We'll start with Rusty here because he played 35 minutes. He had 18, 9, and 10 with 3 steals, and it's a very Russell Westbrook game, except he shot 62% from the field. The free throws were still bad, but if Westbrook's playing 30 minutes plus, he is a 12-team guy like everywhere. He's been a points league guy all season. That's without any doubt whatsoever. But if Braun is missing more time, and I don't know that he is, Westbrook will have 12-team value. Jokic was not at his full best. In fact, he only shot 42% and 17% from 3. But he had 20 and 14 with 13 assists and 3 steals and a block, and that's really hard to complain about. The headmaster, Jamal Murray, had 28, 2, and 6, while Aaron Gordon had 24, 7, and 2, and his minutes went back up. And the poop cookie, Michael Porter, barely did anything. He had a double-double, sure, 11 and 10, but only took 7 shots and nothing else there. He's been up and down, but overall, pretty solid. I thought we'd get a little bit more out of Julian Strawther. He only played 23 minutes. He had 13 and 4, which is good enough as a stream guy. And then Hunter Tyson's probably the one who stepped up as well. 17 minutes for Tyson with 7 points. But all that is really moot if Brown just returns in the next one. The Sacramento side was probably a little bit more interesting. We know that Keegan Murray was out, real late scratch for him. Well, not late scratch, he was out. And Doug McDermott started. We'll start with McDermott just to see whether there's anything there. He had 16 points. He played 27 minutes and he hit 4 threes, and that's fine. I don't care that much. What we do care about is the big, huge game from Keon Ellis. 33 minutes from Ellis, 12 and 6, but 2 steals and 5 blocks. Now, that is obviously a very good line. The fact that both Murray and Herter were out means Ellis has tremendous value. But we've also seen a million times this season when they play, Ellis plays 15 minutes. So, the Kings do have 4 games this week. Thursday and Saturday are the next 2, so high volume days. Would you even start Ellis? I don't know. Obviously, if Murray and Herter are out, you probably would because you're going to get opportunities for this. But of course, 2 steals and 5 blocks in a day is not what is a regular thing, especially for a point guard size player. You're not getting 5 blocks. But that's an interesting conundrum. We love the production, but it did require 2 players being out to get us there. And I don't know that there's any indication that either Herter or Murray are going to be out long term. We get ahead of stuff. We know that. You can try it. Absolutely. 3 more games this week. But just be aware of that. Domantas Sabonis played 41 minutes. He had 28, 14, and 6 with 3 steals. That's really strong. And it was also another monster game from Malik Monk, who starting on him it looks fantastic. Unbelievable. 25, 6, and 9. 3 blocks and 4 threes, of course. No Herter and no Murray do help. But he's still a must-roster player right across the board, Malik Monk. Fox had 29 with 6 assists, while DeMar DeRozan had just a pretty pedestrian game, to be honest. 39% from DeMar, 17, 3, and 4, with 2 steals. But yeah, it's a weird day. Colby Jones also picked up the bench minutes in this one. Jay Crowder played 5 minutes because he is 100% absolutely guaranteed to be washed. Colby Jones, again, just a little bit there to watch if Keegan and Herter remain out, but they literally just might not miss any more games. And Trey Lyles could also come back in the next one too. Alice is the big story, but it also might be a story that turns into absolutely nothing. All right, let's do the last game of the day. Real huge blowout here. The Jazz and the Clippers, 144-107 is your final score. We're not going to get huge amounts of stuff out of this. This game was over incredibly early. Utah did roll out the same starting lineups. Let's just take a look at some of those performers. And Keontae George, who'd been playing well, didn't. He had 9 points on 18% shooting. He also couldn't hit free throws. He did manage to add 7 assists and 3 rebounds, which is something, I guess. The rest of it was pretty bad. I would still be holding him. Colin Sexton, I'm very, very, very comfortable jacking him at the moment.
Get that garbage out of here!
Yeah, he had 15 points. So you look at the start of that box score, looks great. But 0 rebounds, 2 assists, no defensive stats, no free throws. And he shot 70% to get there, and he played 24 minutes. So, move on. Jordan Clarkson scored well, 20 points. He took a lot of shots in that small amount of playing time, 23 minutes. He also didn't do very much else. He is streamable, and I think both him and Sexton are streaming 12-team league players. They needed a lot more. But we got 25 minutes out of Lauri Markkanen. He had 17 and 5. He hit 3 threes. He had 2 steals, which is all well and good. But you know my thoughts on Lauri. It's just he's not going to be there at the end of the season, and that means it's going to be hard to deal with him. 23 minutes for Kessler, 10 and 7, which is fine, but nothing exciting. We had 15 Filipowski minutes and 6 points for Sensabaugh. Overall, just a pretty rough game. Really interesting that in a game like this where the score is such a gigantic blowout that John Collins played 38 minutes. 38. He had one of his actually worst games, 14 and 5 with 2 steals and a block, but that's a lot of minutes for Johnny Collins. On the other side of things, obviously they didn't need to push things too much there for the Clippers, considering how easy the victory was, but Amir Coffey moved into the starting lineup ahead of Nico Batum. Batum had 4 points in 16 minutes, while Coffey had 16 points in 34 minutes. He also hit 3 threes. He played a lot of minutes because they just didn't have many other options, but again, what are we going to read into this? Jim Harden was crazy, 41 with 7 threes and 6 assists, and Zubats had a nice 19 and 12 double-double. Norm Powell did his thing, shot unbelievably. Look at the Zubats, Powell, and Harden. 65 for Harden, 73 for Zubats, and 75 for Powell in terms of shooting. They're ridiculous numbers. Chris Dunn was sick before the game, but he played. He had 12 and 2 with 4 assists and 2 steals. So just doing little bits and pieces as a stream guy. Continues to do the same thing. And Kevin Porter only scored 7 points on 13%. That's Keontae George-esque. But he did have 8 rebounds and 6 assists and 3 steals. Porter's moving to be at least interesting enough in 12-team leagues as a stream guy. And there's not much else going on here. Bones Highlander played 20 minutes in each of the last couple of games, but you only really played garbage time here, so he was sort of back out of the rotation, so bear that in mind if you were considering a Bones Highland ad. But overall, just like a game that was over like really incredibly early and doesn't really tell us a huge amount here as we move forward, I don't think. Let's give out some lines of the night. We'll start with the monstrous line of the night. This can only really go one direction. It's Jim Butler, 35, 19, and 10 with 4 steals from Jimmy. He was absolutely elite in this game. The waiver wire line of the night, also a pretty easy one. Keon Ellis is available in so many different spots. He added 5 blocks. He had 2 steals. He had 12 points. He got a lot of minutes with no Murray and no Herter. We can get ahead of it. Just don't be surprised when it falls flat. The young gun of the night, the best performance from a first or second year player. We're going to head to Ausar Thompson, who started with Tobias Harris out. He had 19 and 9 with 4 steals. Again, fine, have a crack, but don't think this is the second arrival of Ausar. And then the dud of the night is the big fella himself, Keontae George, 9, 3, and 7. Did his best in garbage time to try and resurrect that line, but not enough, Keontae. You didn't get there in the end. I'm not going to go through all the top 6s or anything like that to end this show because I'm running a little bit out of time. I can go through and tell you who they were. Butler was number 1, followed by Sabonis, Harden, George, Jokic, and Maxey. Your waiver wires were Keon Ellis, Karis LeVert, Ausar Thompson. I just spoke about Ausar and Keon there. Leaky Beasley, who's worth a look, and Drew Smith is more of a 14-team to 12-team streamer, and Kelly Oubre, who I do think is a 12-team league player. If I look at my Yahoo points, top 6 players for the day, if I wait for that to load, it's Butler, followed by Jokic, Maxey, Sabonis, Cade Cunningham, and Paul George. And then we go to our ESPN Points League top 6 of the day. Butler, George, Sabonis, Harden, Jokic, and Malik Monk. Just quickly have a look at some guys who did have to leave this game due to injury. Trendon Watford with a hamstring. I think that he'll miss some time there. So Dayron and Noah Clowney play a little bit more. Josh Giddey his ankle. He's going to miss time. So Ayodosumu and even Lonzo Ball's worth looking at. Brandon Miller left with an ankle injury. Cody Martin's going to be your option, I think, in that spot. And Isaiah Stewart with his knee. For deeper leagues, you can look at the big fella, Paul Reed, in that position. And then there was only other one injury there, which I'll just update on that little list there. Jakob Poeltl with his groin. It could be Olynyk. It could be Boucher. It could be Fernando. It could be Mobo. I'm not feeling super confident either way. Olynyk's the best player there, so you can try that. Although don't be surprised if we get just a weird mishmash. Again, Olynyk did not play after Poeltl got hurt, and we didn't see anything like that going on. They went really small, and we got a lot of Mobo minutes there. So just be aware that it might not be as clear-cut as Olynyk's going to be the guy in Toronto. That is the end of the recap for the games that took place on Monday. Enjoy the NBA Cup tomorrow. Wednesday, 0 games. We'll still have shows, so you're subscribing to the channel and making sure you're not missing any content here, and also making sure that you're having a good day, making sure you're having a good time, and making sure you're not being incredibly hard on yourself, and understand that people make mistakes and you can do something incorrectly as long as you learn from it, as long as you work on it, as long as you try and be better the next time. Really, that's what's important, but focus on the good things as well. I understand you did a good thing. It's going to be there. You might have to train your brain to look for it, but it's going to be there. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.